Good afternoon, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma. Welcome back again for another afternoon Dhamma talk. Today we have a guest speaker, Brother Ng Lit Sin. I will read his brief biodata and before I pass the mic over to him. Brother Ng Lit Sin has been serving in the BISDS since the late 1980s. He has held many positions in the BISDS, including the post of Vice Principal. He is currently an executive committee of the BISDS and heads the IT and Communications, Publication and Staff Training Department. Lit Sin has a degree in engineering from the Monash University, Melbourne. His experience in computer graphics and multimedia led him to work in the television and production industry. He has produced many award-winning animated series both locally and abroad. Notable productions for the Buddhist community includes The Oil Lamp and The Abbot and the Orphan, animated series which won awards in the Buddhist International Film Festivals in Sri Lanka. Let's put our palms together and say sadhu 3 times to Brother Ng. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, thank you very much. A very good afternoon to all of you. How have your program been so far? Fantastic. I would like to say a very big sadhu to all of you for making this effort. It is not, very often that one gets, the opportunity to make such a commitment to spend some time to do this. All right? And we have a very interesting topic this afternoon. Avoiding fools associate with the wise. At surface value, it is quite obvious, isn't it? We don't want to get into trouble. All right? Let me just tell you some of my experience in life and in relation to this topic. In 1986, came back from abroad with an engineering degree, specializing in structural analysis using computational methods. So that was 1986. When I came back, and very, very enthusiastic, looking forward to making changes in the engineering industry. But to my surprise, nobody wanted computers at that time. Everywhere I went, I was just turned away. So they were just saying, computers, why do we need computers? And I went to some universities, and at that time, all they had was a green color computer, orange colored computer. For their engineering and their design department, they had computers that had no pictures. So I found myself obsolete. So I couldn't practice what I had learned. And the only thing I ended up with was in engineering laboratory, soil and engineering laboratory. And there I could use my computer experience to help them. They were very happy. They were plotting graphs with hand, and they were doing the experiments basically manually. And I helped to computerize things a bit for them. But I found that eventually the engineering community was not quite about engineering. So my experience began with, ironically, the building behind us, Palm Court. So as a lab engineer, we were responsible for testing the material that goes into the building. And one of the tests was a concrete test. And the concrete that was applied to build the building was actually very bad. To test concrete, you have to, cast a cube to standard proportions and test it under standard conditions. And you have to test it at day number 3, day number 7, and 21 days before, you get the final strength, the performance of the concrete. And from the concrete pour itself, I could see that something was amiss. Every column was a different color. And then when we tested it, obviously it failed 3-day test. And people said, don't worry, wait for the 7-day test. When the 7-day test came, failed, oh, don't worry. Let's wait for the 21-day test. By which time it was too late. So the whole experience was quite bad for me because I had to put my signature on this test. And I was a bit surprised why my boss was telling me, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. And eventually I found out that my boss was the one who supplied some chemicals to the concrete production plant, to try to, in Malaysia everything was happening very, very fast. Everyone wanted fast results. And so they had tried to use all these chemicals to get a high early strength in concrete and all that, but it always obviously wasn't working. But it was some sort of a conflict of interest. So I had to put my name in a lot of tests to falsify results. So I told my boss, sorry, I don't want to do this anymore. So and my boss was telling me, are you crazy? You're being very foolish. Because at that time, after 2 years, you will only be allowed to be a member of the Institute of Engineer after 2 years working professionally. And that was almost at the time where I was supposed to get my membership as a professional engineer. And I soon realized that, engineering, from many other experiences I had in engineering was, it was nothing to do with engineering. It was more to do with, dealing with a lot of all these things, under counter and all that. And building was supposed, as a civil engineer, we were supposed to design buildings to be efficient, to be strong, to use less material. But over here, we are talking about economics. Why do you want to use so little material? With more material, you can sell more material, you can make more money. So I left the engineering industry, so to say, and I went into programming. So without a proper programming qualification, I just went to work with anyone, basically. So I went to work with Amusing Machine Holdings, Mr. Patrick Teo's company. He was having the one of the most modern sound recording studio at that time. So I helped them maintain their recording, turning it over from manual tape recording to computer digital recording. So I was at very forefront of this multimedia technology at that time. And after that, I started cartoon workshop because, everywhere I went, I started to realize that everybody just wanted to make a lot of money very quickly, and I was, they would do many, many things that are quite questionable. As a Buddhist, so I couldn't take it. So eventually my profession went from engineering to programming to eventually doing cartoons myself. So that was what I found to be something that I could control myself. So that's how I ended up being an animator, doing cartoons. And with this, from this experience, you could see that, many people tell me, even my insurance agent told me, "Are you got to be kidding me, right? You're giving up, from engineering, I gave up to becoming an engineer." And then when I was with Music Machine, and I give up quite a lot of opportunities. I gave up my insurance. I actually wanted to become a monk. And then eventually someone told me, how do you know a monk's life is the best, as a human being, So eventually I took the life of a lay person. So we could try. Even Prince Siddhartha married, had a life, had a family, and he could speak about family life, had experience. So here I am, stuck in the situation, right? But it taught me many things. That if you want to talk about fools, being a fool or being wise, then we have to talk about the frame of reference, right? It's just as good as saying, do good, avoid evil. What is good? What is evil? One man's meat, another man's poison. What is a fool? Right? A fool in one frame of reference. Maybe a fool, may well be a sage. Alright? In another. And this picture, here you see a very famous past life of the Buddha. Okay, this is Jataka number 547. Anybody guess? Would like to guess which Jataka is this? Jataka, you know Jatakas? Right? The past life of the Buddha. When he was enlightened, he could recall 500 over past lives. This is when he was reborn as Vesantara. You've heard of Vesantara Sutta? Vesantara is the Jataka. It's very, very popular in Burma, in Thailand. They revere Bodhisattva because at that time he's a Bodhisattva. Okay? They revere Bodhisattva Vesantara as much as the Buddha himself. Why? This was the time where he perfected generosity, dana. He could give everything. He was born a prince also at that life, a prodigy. When he was born also he could speak. And then, at the same day he was born, a white elephant also was born. And this white elephant was a very auspicious elephant for their kingdom, could bring rain. And trouble started for him when a neighboring kingdom, Kalinga, had drought, no rain. So they came to his kingdom and asked for this rain machine, the white elephant. And he gave it away, together with all the jewelries and adornment on the elephant. And the people complained to the king, "Why are you giving away our precious elephant?" You know. So they wanted the king to punish him. And the king was a very just king, so he had to listen to the people. And he sent Vesantara into exile to a far away land. And before he agreed to be sent away. But before he went, even then, he asked the king for permission to do more dana, to give 700 things. So he kept on giving. And on the way to be exiled, he had a wife and 2 children. Along the way, Devas tried to help him, And along the way, he gave away his children. Can you imagine that? This is the picture about a Brahmin, Jajuka, who was pressured by his wife. He took a young wife. And the young wife has always been laughed at. "Oh, you married this old man," and all that kind of stuff, So the young wife said, "I don't want to be seen, you get me some slaves to work to work for us." So they told him that, "Oh, you go to this Vesantara, he's a very generous person. He's well known for generosity. He'll give anything, He's got 2 children. He'll give it to you. He'll give them to you." And that's exactly what happened. The children tried to, beg their father, "Please don't give us away, He explained to the children, and then he did some ritual, giving his children away to this Brahmin. And then the Lord of the heavens, Sakra, right, was a bit worried that he might give his wife away, to some vile creatures, because it's like that. He could give everything. It's not attached to his children. And he won't, he will probably give away his wife. If there was any hideous beast asking for his wife, he will give it away. So, the king of the heaven came down in the form of a Brahmin and asked for his wife. And sure enough, he gave. Give away his children, give away his wife. And then the king of heaven, Sakra, revealed himself and then told him, wow, this is incredible. The Devas rejoice in your perfection of giving. And then everything became better for him. His children was returned to him eventually. And then his father got him back to the kingdom. And he became a wise king. This was the life of the Buddha before he went to heaven. He was reborn in Tusita heaven. So after Tusita heaven, then he was reborn one last time as Prince Siddhartha. So that is the story of Vesantara. So by today's standard, what do you think of this man, Vesantara? What do you think? Would you give away your children? Would you give away your wife, your spouse? So by today's standard, then why, the Devas, the King of Heavens, rejoiced in this action? Why? In what frame of reference? Is he celebrated as a sage? You all say that it's not wise to give, right? You're not unable to do that. Be foolish. So, in one frame of reference, you be deemed a fool. Another frame of reference, you're a sage. That's right. That's right. He dictated, he decided for them. Right? Of course, I told you the very shortcut story. You can go and read it in detail. He explained to the children. The children try to hide. Explain to them. But eventually, he got his children back. He got the wife back. When the Devas rejoiced in his effort, then the Devas granted him a wish. He said he wanted this. He wanted his father to recall him back to his kingdom. He wanted his children back, and he got them back. The children actually went with the Brahmin, and then later on they met the king. The king bought the children back. Bought the children back, and then the Brahmin also died, but because he didn't have any will, no heir, and the money went back to the kingdom. So all these things, all his money went back to him, his children went back to him. But nevertheless, if you're tested, would you be able to do what he did? Not many of us will, because it will be deemed as foolish, right? So the point is that what is the frame of reference we are talking about when we say associate with the wise? Right? So obviously, we are talking about the Buddhist frame of reference. Right? And when we say wisdom in the Buddhist reference, then it must necessarily lead to what's the main aim of Buddhism? Enlightenment. What is enlightenment? Nibbana, yeah, but what does it mean? Total annihilation, removal of craving. Is that what we really want as Buddhists? Is that the ultimate goal is, some prosperity or some, happiness, heaven. Cycle of samsara here. Is that? So wisdom is that, in the Buddhist frame of reference, it must lead to the end of dukkha, right? So it's just a label that we give today, Nibbana. That's it. No fame, no fortune. Nibbana, something that we can't even really understand what it is. It's just very simple, like Samanayarada said. Annihilation of craving, removal of craving. Simple, right? Very simple. But as with everything simple, it's just about the most difficult thing to do. It may be simple, but it's very difficult to do. Right? Now, this picture that I created is what I call the Buddhist dilemma. As Buddhists, Buddhism, it is a religion that, number one, denies the entire concept of God, right? Almighty Creator God. So as a Buddhist, you have already denied, you have given the right to say, God, please help me, Cannot say that anymore. No more God, no more Creator God to help you. Is that right? It's Buddhism. You have denied the concept of God. And not only that, you have denied the notion of a permanent soul. Okay, I can say, no God, I can live with it. No soul, no permanent soul. Do you believe in a soul? Can you imagine that? No soul. So what are we talking about? Which part of Buddhism do we have no soul? Any idea? Which part of Buddhism does it suggest the concept of no soul? Huh? Yeah, whose consciousness? Whose consciousness? Your consciousness? But where is you? There is no you then. Whose consciousness are we talking about? Would have a guest? I'm sure you heard of anicca, dukkha, anatta. What is anatta? Non-self. Yeah, what's non-self? There is no self. The concept of no soul. So as Buddhists, we are content with that. No God. We even deny ourselves. So and all Buddhists view the very existence, we view our very existence in life as unsatisfactory. Right? Undesirable. Unnecessary cycle of rebirth. Do you agree or not? So as Buddhists, you term your existence as unnecessary cycle of rebirth in samsara? Do you agree with that? Do you really see that? Yeah, we're already here, yeah. But as Buddhists, the concept of being a Buddhist means that we are going to accept the fact that rebirth in the cycle of rebirth in samsara is unnecessary and undesirable. Suffering. Because if you don't accept that, then you're going to have trouble identifying with Buddhism. You can just say that I'm a Buddhist, but all I want is prosperity, happiness, and, merits, good fortune, happiness. But being a true Buddhist, you actually, you have to contend that this cycle of rebirth is unnecessary, is undesirable, So three things. And then a dilemma. If you don't want the unsatisfactory samsara, what is your goal? Nibbana. What is Nibbana? Your goal we can hardly explain in words. Your goal is inconceivable. Would that be right to say it's inconceivable? So, you get what I mean? I'm trying to establish our frame of reference when we talk about wisdom and we talk about foolishness. So, in this frame of reference, our goal is indefinable, indescribable, conventionally inconceivable. I say conventionally because in samsara, we are living in the realm of relativity, right? Okay, Einstein comes out with this theory of relativity. Basically, everything just depends on another. Everything is in relation of something. Nothing is ever absolute. Nothing is ever absolute. Everything is in relation to something. Everything exists because they are all in a state of flux, in a state of motion. You get what I mean? By everything being, always in motion, always in a state of flux, nothing is absolute, permanent, there's no permanent entity, So, whatever devices we have in this samsaric world is relational. And words that we come up with, language that we come up with, they are just born of this consciousness in samsara. What I'm trying to get at is that we can't use devices in samsara, in a relational world, to describe something that is unconditional, unborn, and absolute. Right? Of course, then, why are we all talking about Nibbana? Nibbana, the words that we use can give us clues. It's easier to talk about what Nibbana is not, but it is very difficult to say what Nibbana is. Our words are samsara, based on samsara, can only give us some clues. This frame of reference it's just like we are all in a three-dimensional world, right? We have length, we have width, we have height, right? But a photograph, something in 2 dimensions, is flat. You only have length and width. But you can represent something in 3 dimensions in a 2-dimensional world, right? Can we do that? How? If we are trapped in a 2-dimensional world, will we ever be able to understand anything in 3 dimensions? So there's no way we can describe, say if we are a 2-dimensional being, can we ever describe something in 3 dimensions? Discuss about something in 3 dimensions? Is there a possibility? Yeah. Take a picture. Right? If you have a camera, of course a camera is a 3-dimensional, a device that was developed in 3-dimensional world. But nevertheless, a photograph doesn't have depth. It's just 2 dimensions. It's a projection. A photograph is a projection of something in 3 dimensions. You could explain to someone in a 2-dimensional world, make-believe 2-dimensional world, what a 3-dimensional is like. Well, words can do that kind of thing. Okay? It's just some sort of, we can talk about some projections of Nibbana through words. But that is all we are limited to. Right? So, in this Buddhist frame of reference, we have all those, concepts that are so very difficult to take. And the Buddha teaches the entire Dhamma, main teachings of the Buddha, the 4 Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path. What can we say? We just rattle it off. It's very easy. It's unconventional. Would you agree it's unconventional? Asking you to give up all the things that the material world say, please, have more money. Whereas the Buddha said, no. Have more materialistic aspirations. The Buddha said, no. Detachment. Right? He himself, during his enlightenment, enough now with teaching, what only with difficulty I reach. This Dhamma is not easily realized by those overcome with aversion and passion. No, what is abstruse, what is difficult to understand, hard to see, going against the flow. Those beings that are delighting in it, passion, right, will not be able to understand, will not be able to see, will not want to see. So under these circumstances, being a Buddhist is very difficult. Wouldn't you say so? As a Buddhist, as a devotee, you can get very confused. And I can see many, many Buddhists too. They get confused. And it's not being helped by, people thinking that, we want to have more marriage to get more, good fortune. But Buddhism really is something that is very unconventional. And it is with this frame of reference that we are trying to establish who is a fool and who is a sage. If we don't understand, then we will be just like what is seen in this picture, fish out of water. So, against all this backdrop of this Buddhist reference, a Buddhist must then must really understand the reason to strive on diligently with sublime attitudes of metta, karuna, mudita, and upekkha. Do you understand what is metta, karuna? Right? Mudita and upekkha? So this is the solution that the Buddha has for the world. Metta is to fight hatred. The world is full of hatred. The Buddha preaches metta. Compassion, karuna, compassion, is the Buddha's way, the antidote of cruelty. Right? It's all cruel. People do a lot of cruel things. And the Buddha preaches compassion. Mudita, sympathetic joy. When someone's happy, you're happy. You really truly feel happy with it. That's the Buddhist antidote, medicine for jealousy, envy. So we can truly share another person's joy. So as Buddhists, I often see, it really does work. Personally, when I even see a video of people doing their devotion, practicing the devotion in a temple, I could connect with that. I'm so happy for that person. His devotion that he's practicing, I can feel it. And therefore I rejoice. And I benefit from his happiness. He's happy doing it. I get the happiness. Upeka, equanimity. So when the world is full of up and down, everybody is suddenly very elated, very happy. In the next moment, we have a disaster and all that. And the Buddha preaches equanimity. Right? So as a Buddhist, we really have to understand the real reason why we are striving. Otherwise, you're going to be very, very confused. Why do you want to, practice detachment? Your neighbor is buying a new car. He's moving to a big house. But as Buddhists, we are told, don't be attached. Don't want to have this, don't want to have that. Lead a simpler life. So can you contend with that? Are we really, as Buddhists, do we really want that? Do we really want to be like that? Simple, live a simple life. The Buddha's ministry, the Sangha, it's a perfect example of how to lead a very simple life. So we have to really understand as Buddhists. Then we can start talking about the fool. Okay, from the Buddhist frame of reference. Obviously the statement, avoiding fools, associating with the wise. So fool here is used as a noun. Okay? So what is a fool? How would you define a fool? Someone with greedy fool. Someone? Sorry, again? Specifically sensual pleasure. So someone who is really pushing, sensual pleasure. Okay? What else do you see in a fool? Breaks the 5 precepts. Yeah. Someone that encourages you to do bad things. There's an inside joke going on. Some more? Dishonest person. Yeah. Okay. Well, the word is used as a noun. Person who is lacking in judgment, lacking judgment, not wise, or prudence. You don't think first. Don't think. Just simply do. An entertainer dressed in motley with cap, bells and bauble. You know what's this? Clown, jester. So in those olden days we have these court jesters. They are called a fool. One who is duped, made to be foolish. Made a fool, tricked. Someone that's tricked. You've been tricked. You've been made a fool. That means you've been tricked and made to look very foolish. A harmless, deranged person is also a fool. Doesn't know what is happening, And one with extreme fondness for something, also a fool. Right? I'm a fool for you, I'm a fool for electronic gadgets. I'm a fool for this and I'm a fool for that. So with extreme fondness, totally attached to something. It's also a fool. So we have 5 definitions of fool here. In this context of avoiding fools, I think, which one should we avoid? Avoid all. Which one is the most dangerous? Number 1. Yep. That's one we definitely want to avoid. So that is the context in which the Buddha says avoiding fools. Alright, because a person who's lacking in judgment or prudence, if you keep company with these people, they'll get you in trouble. Alright? Number 2, we only have to empathize with them, understand why they have to do it. Maybe make a living as a clown. Make a fool of themselves. But to cheer someone up. So we empathize with number 2. Number 3, one who is duped or made to be foolish. This one we sympathize. Have pity. People go to the bank and all of a sudden, they are, pokal. And then made to give away all their money. So it's duped, tricked. And number 4, harmless, deranged person. We have compassion for these people. Some people, have problem, mental problem, so we can just have compassion for these people. Number 5, one with extreme fondness for something, pity you. So we pity these people. We have a fool for something, Where would you find the Buddha saying about fools? Mangala Sutta, yes. Okay. The exact phrase that you see there, avoiding fools, associated with a wise, Mangala Sutta. Mangala, blessing, highest blessing. Maha Mangala Sutta, that's the highest blessing. And that is when the Lord Sakra came down and asked the Buddha, there's a confusion among people, among devas. What constitutes exactly the highest blessing? What is most, long life, lots of children, money, wealth, health. What exactly is the highest blessing? So the Buddha explained in the Mangala Sutta. And the first thing that he said is this: avoid fools. Is the highest blessing. Associate with wise, highest blessing. But any other places in the Buddha's teaching that you find fools being described? The most popular Buddhist text of all, the Dhammapada, has an entire chapter on fools, chapter 5. Okay, so I would like to, chapter 5, there are 16 verses. So we don't have time to go through all 16, so I choose some of the most popular ones. Right? Chapter 5, Dhammapada, the most popular Buddhist text, most widely read around, most widely quoted Dhammapada. Verse number 63, a fool who knows his foolishness is wise, at least to that extent. but a fool who thinks himself wise is a fool indeed. Have you heard of this? Have you heard of this? How many have heard of this? So this is very popular. Yeah? That means you are a fool. You think you are a fool. At least you are wise to the extent you acknowledge that you are ignorant about something, and then you learn. Right? This one the Buddha says when he was at Jetavana monastery, and there was going to be a huge crowd of devotees. So obviously, Buddha coming, everyone wants to go. So two thieves took it as an opportunity. Hey, good place, man, to work. So they went. One of them, listening to the Buddha's sermon, was so totally, he became wise. So he's immersed in the Buddha's talk. While the other one went around stealing things. So many people. So took advantage of the situation, stole, and then when they went back home, they shared their loot. So the thief who just sat there listening to the sermon said, no, I didn't steal anything. I think what the Buddha says is very good. Then the other thief's wife laughed at him. What, man? What a big, great opportunity that you missed. So, eventually, the thief went back to the Buddha and said, this is what happened. And the Buddha told him, at least you're wise to the extent, knowing that stealing is very foolish. You didn't do it. Yeah? But a fool who still thinks he's wise is definitely a fool. He's the biggest fool. Okay? Verse number 64. Though all his life a fool associates with a wise man, he no more comprehends the truth than a spoon tastes the flavor of soup. You agree with that? What does that mean? What does that mean? Huh? You can see the picture of the ladle, the soup. The spoon never tastes the soup, right? Huh? So, a fool, if you associate with wise people, still cannot learn anything. So this is a story about a monk, Udai, who was residing in the Jetavana monastery. And then when some people came to listen to the sermon, he liked to go and sit the place where the Buddha preached. So he sat there, and then when these people came, wanted to listen to some talk, they thought he was some accomplished monk, And then when he started to talk, then everyone think, why? Don't talk sense, So they all went to the Buddha, and the Buddha said, well, this is a situation, huh? Some fools never learn. Although they have been, have the opportunity to be with the Buddha, to be with the Sangha, didn't learn anything. Verse 69. So long as an evil deed has not ripened, the fool thinks it as sweet as honey. But when the evil deed ripens, the fool comes to grief. This is a story, a very, very tragic story of a nun. Any idea? It's a very popular story of one of the second chief disciple, female chief disciple of the Buddha. Who's the second chief disciple of the Buddha? Woman, female chief disciple of the Buddha. Theri Uppalavana. What is Uppalavana? She's very, very beautiful. Very beautiful. Because her complexion, has a very bluish hue. So that's why her name was Uppalavana. And many, many people came to ask for her hand in marriage. And because she don't want to disappoint everybody, she became a nun. And because she was also a very, very wise nun, very intelligent, one day while she was cleaning the temple, she focused on the candle flame. She took that as a meditation object, and she achieved enlightenment, using the candle flame. But she lived alone. She lived in the forest, and then one day, one of her spurned suitor, the people who went to ask for hand marriage, in fact, it was her cousin. The cousin went and hid in her shed, and then took advantage of her. So, for that, she told the cousin, don't do it, but he couldn't resist. So for that, the Buddha said this: so long as evil deed has not ripened, the fool thinks it is sweet as honey, But after that, immediately after he walked out of the hut, the act was so bad that immediate karma, ripened. The earth opened up and it was swallowed in. So it must be some sort of an earthquake. It was swallowed into the earth and it was reborn in hell, for many, many lives. Verse 71. Truly an evil deed committed does not immediately bear fruit, like milk that does not turn sour all at once, but smoldering it follows the fool like fire covered by ashes. So this is a story of a snake peta, Ahipeta, snake peta. So when this one was when Venerable Moggallana, he went for alms round one day, and he saw this snake body, human head, hungry ghost, peta, and but he kept quiet, and then he went to tell the Buddha, and then the Buddha explained to him that this man, a very long time ago, he actually prevented people from visiting Pachika Buddha. He was the owner of a farm, and there was a Pachika Buddha where people wanted to visit and had to walk across the field. So he was very, very annoyed with people, a lot of heavy traffic in the field. So he decided to burn the shed, the Pachika Buddha shed. And for that, he got rid of the problem. So the evil deed committed, he think he solved his problem by burning away the Pachika Buddha's shed. Okay. Then, eventually, he was born like that. So in many things, in Buddhism, you have the, repercussion, bad people doing bad things, and then they seem to be getting away with it. But, like the Buddha said, milk doesn't turn sour all at once. Okay? But you can't escape it. It follows you like fire. 75. One is the quest for worldly gain, and quite another is the path to Nibbana. Clearly understanding this, let not the monk, the disciple of the Buddha, be carried away by worldly acclaim, but develop detachment instead. This story is actually about a monk getting famous. Not about getting famous, not about personal fame. It's about a young monk, Tissa, whom, when he became a monk, he is actually a son of a rich person. And then, when he became a monk, he was actually a disciple of Moggallana. And then, when he went to the forest monastery by himself, when people visited him and gave him alms, all he said was, "May you be well and happy. May you be well. May misfortune, not happen to you." All he did was say that. So the villagers, I think, got a bit tired of him. So who is this monk? Don't know anything. Just know how to say, "May you be well." And may bad things don't happen to you. Then when Moggallana and the Buddha visited the village, so the villagers asked Venerable Moggallana it's not Moggallana, it's Sariputta, to deliver the sermon. But then Venerable Sariputta knows that this Venerable Tissa has actually achieved enlightenment. Ask him to give his talk, his sermon. And then when he gave his sermon, then all the villagers started to realize, he knows something. Some people were very happy, but some people were not. Some people say, why, every time we ask to go to him and he say, "May you be well." Maybe you well and happy. So when the Buddha know that there were some people not happy with them, then the Buddha went to explain to these people, that as a monk, we are not really looking for large following, great fame and acclaim, worldly acclaim. But we are supposed to develop detachment. So that's how difficult it is to be Buddhist. Anyone can recognize this? The Three Stooges. So this class of fool, happily deranged, harmless fools. So what's the idea of fool? My favorite fools when I was young. See the Three Stooges. So you can see they're doing something very, very foolish. Trying to turn the propeller right under the propeller. Guess what happens when the propeller starts? The other person? Anyone can recognize the other person? That's right. The famous Patch Adams. He behaves like a fool. Would you like to tell everyone about Patch Adams? Yes, happiness cures. He actually set up an entire institute, right, to help unfortunate, children, cheering them up. And he dressed up as a clown. So there's a movie also made about him, Patch Adams. Have you all seen that movie, Patch Adams? Robin Williams. Okay, now we talk about a sage. What is a sage? Associate with a wise. Okay, wise man. Okay, wise man we call sage lah. A person with profound wisdom. A person venerated for wisdom, judgment, and experience. Right? So this is a picture of Chinese sage. Anyone would not guess? It's a picture of a drawing of Zhuangzi. It's not Buddhist, it's Taoist, but wise person. Picture of him sleeping, and there are two butterflies. It's depicting one of the very famous saying. Remember, you know Zhuangzi, and he's saying about, he was sleeping and he dreamt about butterflies. He dreamt about butterflies. And then when he awoke, he had this thought. Was I sleeping and dreaming of the butterfly? Or am I actually the butterfly's dream? So this is the wisdom of understanding that everything is relative. Relativity. It could very well be, his existence could very well be a dream of the butterfly. Instead of him dreaming of butterfly. Okay. Again, the Dhammapada is our source. Chapter 6 is the whole chapter on wise. The wise man. Okay. 76. Should one find a man who points out faults and who reproves, let him follow such a wise and sagacious person as one would a guide to hidden treasure. It is always better and never worse to cultivate such an association. Huh? So this one, the Buddha said this when there was a man who was cleaning the temple, Radha, and nobody paid any attention to him, and nobody wanted him to, he wanted to become a monk, but then the Buddha went to him and said, why nobody paid any attention to this man? He realized that this man is ready to attain enlightenment, So he asked all the Sangha members, do you all know this person? Can anyone think of something good that this person has done for you? Then Venerable Sariputta said, yeah, I did. I remember there was one instance where he offered me rice. So then he said, would you like to take him as your disciple? So he took this man as his disciple. And then following his instruction, he was a very diligent person. He followed Venerable Sariputta's instruction and he became enlightened. So the Buddha uttered this. So when you find someone wise, then treat him as though he was someone who's going to show you the treasure. The treasure of enlightenment. Okay? Not money. Verse 77, let him admonish, instruct and shield one from wrong. He indeed is dear to the good and detestable to the evil. This one, the Buddha said about some monks actually went out and started to build their own community. So there were some monks who were actually disciples of Venerable Moggallana and Sariputta. They went and tried to start a community, planting their own trees, fruit trees, and living on their, depending only on their own cultivation. Anything wrong with that? Don't see anything wrong with that, right? But it's wrong. As a monk, they're not supposed to do that. The Buddha had this foresight. So he has his reasons. And these monks, not only did they do that, they actually went to the village and apparently stole some equipment to cultivate land. See, as Buddhist monks, they're supposed to practice detachment and they're supposed to practice humility from, alms, living only solely on alms food, not cultivating their own food, and stealing equipment, So he sent Moggallana and to reprimand them. So the Buddha said, okay, don't worry, you go there. Only wise people will understand that they are being admonished, scolded. They will take it well. Only the fools will not. So don't worry. Okay? So those who really give us good advice, those are wise people. So he is indeed dear to the good, but detestable to the evil. Okay? Number 78, chapter 6. Do not associate with evil companions. Do not seek the fellowship of the vile. Associate with good friends. And seek the fellowship of noble men. So if you have noble friends, then treasure that. Okay? This is a story of Channa. Thera Channa. Channa, you know Channa as Prince Siddhartha's attendant. You know Prince Siddhartha had an attendant? Who is Channa, the attendant who? You're familiar with the life of the Buddha, where Prince Siddhartha his renunciation. So his attendant, who went with him right to the edge of river Anoma, witnessed the prince's renunciation. He also became a monk. And because of his position, his seniority, he very action. Don't want to listen to everyone. So and he's very jealous also of the two chief disciples, Sariputta and Moggallana. And the Buddha tried to advise him. These are your noble friends. Appreciate it. But don't learn. Right to the time where the Buddha was going to die, Parinibbana, he was still like that. Until the Buddha told Ananda, say, okay lah, no choice. Just have to sort of like exile. Or don't talk to him, leave him alone. And when he realized that, then only he started to appreciate that the Buddha told him, when you have noble friends like the two chief disciples, then you should treasure it. Okay? These are wise people. Verse 83, the good renounce attachment for everything. The virtuous do not prattle with a yearning for pleasures. The wise show no elation or depression when touched by happiness or sorrow. So there you go again. In Buddhism, have to be, show no elation or depression. Equanimity. You're not easily agitated. This is a story of 500 bhikkhus. They were invited by some Brahmins to a village. And then the Brahmins invited them, didn't really take care of them. And it so happened that time, there was a drought, no food around. So the Buddha and his disciples had very, very little food. And they survived. They weren't, totally depressed. And they made do with whatever little that people could offer them. Later, when they went back to Savanti, food was aplenty. So people offered them a lot of food. The people who were following them to the other village and back, now, when they had no food there, they were all going to die. When they came back to Savatthi, wow, enjoy. So looking at all these people, suddenly so sad, suddenly so happy, suddenly so elated, suddenly so depressed. The Buddha said this. So look at all these people, this is not the Buddha's way, not the Buddha's wisdom. Okay? Verse 84. He is indeed virtuous, wise, and righteous, who neither for his own sake nor for the sake of another does any wrong, who does not crave for sons, wealth, or kingdom, and does not desire success by unjust means. Okay, so this story is about Venerable Dhammika. He wanted to become a monk. And then his wife said, "Hey, don't. I'm pregnant. Wait for our child to be born." So wait long. Then when his child was born, then he said, "Can I become a monk now?" She said, No. Please wait. Wait until the child can walk. Then he realized that it's useless asking for permission, from his wife, So he then left, and then he was a very, very good monk, and he became an Arahant, So later when he went back to teach Dhamma to his wife and son, he realized that, everything was okay, Both he went back, and then he realized, there's no problem. And he even got his son to become a monk. And then the wife thought that, since husband become monk, the son also become monk, she also became a nun. So, as a Buddhist, you don't crave for sons, wealth, or kingdom, and does not desire any success by unjust means. So can you imagine that? From what I told you earlier, being a Buddhist, is basically very unconventional, isn't it? Giving away your children. When you have a child, you are able to detach from your child. Many people have a lot of problem trying to explain why Prince Siddhartha left his firstborn. Right? That's one of the things that people always, other religions always say about Buddhism. Very selfish, isn't it? Huh? The child born, there he goes. But you look at it this way. He went away for how long? 6 years. Right? After 6 years, when he came back, what did he bring back? He brought back Dhamma, not only Dhamma. His father became enlightened, his wife became enlightened, his son became enlightened. So he actually came back and gave them the gift of enlightenment, the gift of truth. I think that's the best that you can give, And what is 6 years? Nowadays, you're separated from your children, from your wife. 6 years. I went away for 6 years. Nowadays, if your children go and do a medical course, you'll be away for 7 years? Architectural course, 6 years, 7 years. And he comes back. So, go back to avoiding fools, associate with the wise, where it is used exactly in this context, where you mention the Mangala Sutta. Okay? So the three places, chapter 5 Dhammapada, chapter 6 Dhammapada, the Mangala Sutta, where the Lord came to ask the Buddha about the highest blessing. So, asevana cha balanang, panditanang cha sevana. Sevana means service. And when you put a in front of it, it sort of negates it. So, don't service. Bala, the word bala means children or people with weak mind. So, asevana cha balanang means do not, when you put it together like that, it means do not associate. Don't associate with fools. Okay? The weak-minded. And pandita means wise, learned people. So you associate with the wise. Okay? Pujacha pujaniyanang etang mangala muntamang. This means to pay homage to those who deserves homage. So that is not part of what we are discussing. We are only talking about the first two. Okay? Associating with the wise. Avoiding the fools. Right? So generally the story that it will be brought up is the story of King Ajatasattu and Devadatta. You know Devadatta? Who is Devadatta? Buddha's cousin. Always wanting to take over Buddha's place. Right? And Ajatasattu, who is he? Son of King Bimbisara, right? Who's King Bimbisara? Yeah, great supporter of the Buddha who donated the monastery, Veluvana monastery. Okay? And Prince Ajatasattu is his son. So one day, Devadatta, although he's bad fellow, he has some spiritual, supernatural ability. Not supernatural, psychic ability. From his practice. ED, power, psychic power. One day he appeared on Prince Ajatasattu's lap as a child with snakes wrapped around him. So it frightened the prince. So he is basically showing off his powers. And thereafter, he gained royal patronage. So good in the prince's good books. And they together harbored the most evil plan. Devadatta wants to take over the Buddha's place. He said, Buddha, you're old. Let me take over the Sangha. And the Buddha actually scolded him very, very badly. You know? Can you imagine the Buddha scolding? No? Buddha scolded him. You're not even worthless, like a spit. And so he was very, very angry. And he harbored this very evil plan. He got support from this prince. And he told this prince, you kill your father because your father, you may live too long, you won't have a chance to become king. You kill your father, I kill the Buddha. Good for you, good for me. So, Devadatta initially tried to use the royal connection to kill the Buddha. He got all the archers, tried to shoot the Buddha. But the plan failed. Because the Buddha's power of compassion and loving kindness was so great, they actually sent this archer to shoot the Buddha and to cover their tracks. He sent 2 more archers to shoot the first archer. Then after that, 4 more archers to shoot the 2 archers. This went on like that. But the Buddha knew. So when the first archer came, he couldn't bring himself to shoot the Buddha, to kill the Buddha. And the Buddha could see that if he sent him back, he's going to get shot. So the Buddha sent him the other way around. So eventually all converted, and Devadatta said, useless soldiers. I have to do things myself. So he tried to kill the Buddha himself. By pushing the rock. Alright. And the prince, by associating with Devadatta, tried to kill the father, the king. He actually took a knife, but he was overpowered by the guards. But the father found out. And the father was such a good and nice person. Father asked him, why are you trying to kill me? He said, because I cannot wait for you to step down. I want to be king. Father said, you want to be king? Just ask again, let you be king. But that, again, Devadatta influenced him. So told him cannot. and asked him to imprison the father. So he actually imprisoned King Bimbisara, actually tortured him terribly, in the dungeon. Didn't allow him to eat. Only allowed the queen to visit him. And it was the queen who kept King Bimbisara barely alive. And even that, when this Prince Ajatasattu found out that the mother was sneaking food, and ways to keep the king alive, he actually, cut off the king's foot soles. So he did many evil things, tortured the father, So this is the story that is generally brought up, when dealing with this verse, associating with fools. So the foolish people can drag you down the wrong path. Okay? But how do you recognize nowadays what is a fool or sage? Should we forsake fools? Did the Buddha say, just don't care about fools? We should forsake them. Did the Buddha say anything like that? No. The Buddha said, that you should help them. But in associating with them, you must make sure that you are the wise person, and not get yourself being influenced by them. You influence them instead of they influence you. So you don't forsake the fools. After all, the Buddha eventually decided to teach, his Dhamma. Otherwise we won't have the Dhamma today. Okay. So it's very easy to say that avoid fools. But the most important thing in Buddhism is when we look inwards, there's a fool in us, there's a sage in us. Okay? We have to recognize these qualities. Can anyone recognize who this person is? Sigmund Freud. What about Sigmund Freud? Yeah, brother, you'd like to share about Sigmund Freud? Psychologist. Father of modern psychology. Yeah, he is the one who started psychoanalysis. Freudian theory, right? Uncle Sig. And he is the one who came up with this idea of the id. Right? What's the id? The ego. The id, here he says, is the dark, inaccessible part of our personality. What little we know of it, we have learned from our study of the dream work. He dealt a lot of experiments with dreams, right? And of the construction of neurotic symptoms. And most of that is of negative character and can be described only as a contrast to the ego. Basically, Sigmund Freud realized that human beings have a huge store of beastly instincts, bad habits. Right? This is his connection, his diagram of the connection to the human psyche, the human personality. You have this iceberg metaphor. When you look at the iceberg, you're only seeing the tip of it. There's a huge bit of it under the water, and he said that is the unconscious, it. A lot of it is the unconscious. Huh? We are not really conscious of it. And then we have pre-conscious, the superego. And on top of it, what you see is our conscious self. So we are basically, according to Sigmund Freud, we are basically a constant play out of these three things. The id, the ego, and the superego. The superego is the sage in us, the angel. You know? And the id is the devil in us. So we don't listen to the devil, avoid the fool. You know? And we listen to our superego. Right? So obvious, every time you have, the id telling us, the fool telling us, you need it, you want it, get it now. You know? And the superego is the one that keeps us in check. Say you can't have it now. You can't have everything as and when you want, as and when you like. Then your ego will say, okay lah, just have a little bit of it lah. So that is what's basically what Uncle Sid found out, that we human people have this huge thing. It's a little bit of like, the unconscious is a little bit like our vast karmic storehouse, right? Huh? And his concept of crowd behavior, it's not just the behavior as a person, but when we are in a crowd, there's a different thing happens. We become a member of a crowd, a member of community. And when we are in a crowd, we sort of unlock this unconscious mind. And then this superego is an opportunity for us to just forget this superego. And we allow someone, a charismatic crowd leader to lead us. It's a way for us, an escape. So what happens later, because of that, Uncle Sig was very, very depressed. He actually had a very, very troubled life. And after that, although he's the father of psychology, every psychologist thereafter have been either proving his theories right or wrong. So basically, we're still talking about what he is talking about. But his nephew, this person called Edward Bernays. Have you heard of Edward Bernays? It's his nephew, double nephew. His wife's brother is related to the wife, is also related to the daughter's husband. This person went to America, used his theory, and said, "Why are you trying to be good?" Basically, what the idea was, to be good is very, very difficult. And in the Freudian concept, you cannot justify doing good. Why you want to do good? Doing bad is easier. Whereas in Buddhism, we have a reason for doing good. But for Sigmund Freud, what's the reason for doing good? The only reason for doing good is that socially accepted moral. Everybody wants to be civic-minded, want to be civil, to be civilized, don't want to be termed as an animal. But this guy, Edward Bernays, his nephew, saw the opportunity that if you pander to the person's bad side, it's easier to manipulate them, to manipulate your consent. So basically, what happened was that they realized that they can control people, although you are the one who made the choice. You are the one who said yes. But they found the techniques in his Uncle Sik's work to exploit the unconscious. Selling you ideas, telling you what you want, and therefore you are basically duped. So you are made a fool. Right? So we have a lot of examples of this. It's just like you're in a society, that dresses this way. Would you want to dress any other way? You don't. But it's your choice. But I can make you make that choice. So that is the underlying principle of propaganda. I can make you pick the right person. It's your choice. But I can make you do it. So he's the father of propaganda, but because propaganda is a bad word. When we talk about propaganda, we talk about what? Those old Chinese communist days. Every day, blaring, telling you what you are, what you should do, and what is good and what is bad. So propaganda is a very bad word. So we change it to public relations. So Edward Bernays is known as the father of public relations. Okay, how to engineer your consent. Playing with the fool in your mind. One of his greatest campaign in the 1920s was to make women smoke. At that time, it was a taboo for women to smoke. So until today, not many more men smoke, right, than women. But it was a taboo in the early 1900s, 1920. It was a taboo for women to smoke. How do we get women to smoke? Tobacco companies realized that if you can get women to smoke, we double the sales. And so he came up with all sorts of fantastic ideas. And one of the ideas was torches of freedom. They were so clever. They sat down, they thought about it, Now, who doesn't want to be free? Who doesn't want to which woman doesn't want to feel liberated, equal to men? When they did a lot of studies, they realized that, smoking, the cigarette, actually, they equated the cigarette as the man's penis. So for women to be able to smoke is like giving them, every woman giving them the courage, letting them have penis. And symbolized by the Statue of Liberty, to be liberated. So he organized a campaign. During one of the parade, he planned for all the stars, celebrities to come out on that day. And he got all the newspaper people to come out to capture the event. So it was news. All the celebrities came out during the parade. And at the right moment, all the women whipped out the cigarette and smoked. And it was carried out in all the newspaper. And that's how they got women to smoke. So you'll be liberated. So because of all that, it's so easy. Because of the materialistic selfishness, it's so easy to be fooled. One of the scams these days is money. When I was young, I always thought that money is tied to gold, isn't it? Right? I was told that we can't just simply print our own money. Right? Why can't we simply print our own money? Do we simply print our own money? Anybody in the know in the financial sector? Huh? They do now. Can we simply print our own money? We do now. But Federal Reserves are abusing it. How did that happen? That's right. You're exactly right. It's called deficit spending, right? Yeah. And we thought that, we used to think that money is tied up with our reserves in gold. Right? We cannot simply print money. Right? What happens, long time ago, when we have this gold standard, money is tied to gold. It is actually just a check. Money is just a check. $20, you go to the bank, it's a $20 equivalent in gold. But then, eventually, when they started to float too much money out there, print out money, then the value of the money became less and less. And of course, the greatest economy in the world is America. They were printing so much money when all the countries were in war. Right? But America was not at war. They were happily supplying equipment and food and everything. Everybody in Britain, in Europe were fighting, and America was selling them food and all that stuff. And what happens was that all the money went to these countries. And this money eventually should be exchangeable for gold. But at which time the value was already something like a third. And the European countries started to become very clever and say, hey, all we have is this paper, the American dollar. But if I want my gold back, so they started going back to America and say, hey, you can take back our money, give us the gold. So during wartime, America had the most gold. But after that, they got smarter, and then everybody started to cash out. Start to take back their gold. And then Uncle Sam started to get worried. Oh boy, we actually have more money than there is gold. So what happens if all the gold ran out? You have money that's worth nothing. So it's a big scam. So to stop that, we have this in 1971. We call it the Nixon shock. Nixon actually announced to the world that we are going to take the money off gold. So no more gold standard. And what happened from there was this skyrocketing. You look at the graph, just went up, where people just printed money. It was it's a incredible scam that is being played out until today. That's the reason why inflation goes up like crazy. So it starts off with politicians telling you that, vote for me, and then I will have so many good things for you. And then when they're in power, they said, okay, we need so X amount of money to make this happen. And they basically just asked, like the brother said, we need this money. The Federal Reserve, together with the Treasury, together with the bank, just come out with this money. Just print out this money. So basically, you're right. We're just printing money. But the problem lies in the greed. They keep printing more and more money. And when they print so much money, then inflation, prices start to come up, and we've been in this great inflation until, one day, these money people look at it and say, it is the same old thing all over again. Currency is not money. Every currency in history will fail eventually. So that's why there is a sense of panic these days that they're expecting the dollar, the whole world's economy based on the dollar to crash. And investors, I don't know, I'm sure maybe some of you have heard investors telling you, go for gold. You know, that's the only sure thing, right? So what's going to happen? What's going to happen if everyone goes for gold? That's the only sure currency, right? So you have these wise people telling you that, number one, yes, money is a big scam. So throw away the money, go for gold. What's going to happen? Gold is going to have to make up for the amount of currency, which is astronomical sum. You know, so people who are very greedy will start to look at it. There's a huge potential for gold. Gold prices is going to be skyrocketing, so invest in gold. You know, but from the Buddhist point of view, the wisdom says that, you know, if something is becoming so valuable, then you're going to be so attached to it. It's going to worth so much. Already people are going to willing to kill someone for $50. Can you imagine if gold is so precious? You'll be guarding gold with your life. Right? So from the economic standpoint, it's wise. You know, stock up on gold. Precisely. You know, but when they are expecting money to crash, currency to fail, and this can't eat gold, you know. So from the Buddhist point of view, you know, even if you have gold, you know, then it will become so precious, and so, you know, you won't be able to sleep, you know. You need to be able to detach from it. The other scam, the food scam. Meet the Truth. Have you all seen this documentary, Meet the Truth? What's the problem with meat and dairy industry? Have you heard anything about meat and dairy industry? Or anyone from the meat and dairy industry? Well, meat industry is definitely the number one cause of global warming. You know that? The climate changes, you know, all the tsunamis and all the typhoons is a result of climate change, global warming, you know. And politicians all over the world, because of their dependency on this current fuel, fossil fuel, still wants to deny, because it's very, very tied up to the economy. You know? So with these people, we are being duped because of economic reasons, because of human selfishness. We are duped. We are made fools. And when you realize all the scam that's happening, then you start to appreciate the Buddha's teaching is right. You know, to be detached, to lead a simple life. If everyone does that, you know, things will be a lot better for everyone. The meat industry is the single most biggest cause of climate change, which is affecting, you know, all these typhoons and tornadoes. It's getting worse and worse because of the meat industry. Why? Because of the meat industry. The amount of meat that we eat. Obviously, you know, right, as we eat higher and higher up the food chain, is less and less efficient. To get the amount of meat, you waste a lot of resources. And they have been clearing the forests in Brazil, you know, just to plant food, not for human consumption, for cows to eat, you know. And why? Why do we really need meat? Like the PR campaign, keep telling you that we all need protein. If we don't have protein, we die. But that's far from the truth. When we ask people, where do you get protein? Meat. As if there is no protein from vegetables. The other thing is, how much protein do we need? We have eating so much meat that we start to get problems. Despite the mountain of evidence that protein, especially animal protein, leads to cancer, the meat industry still denies it. You cannot prove it. But there's a lot of evidence already. How many of you have heard of the China study? The China study basically is an American-initiated study, collaboration with China, and they found out that, basically, most of the cancer is caused by animal protein. And because we eat so much of protein, and a lot of cancer, everyone has cancer. A lot of, it is a seed in us, but it doesn't express itself so much from other proteins except for meat protein. From a Buddhist standpoint, personally I feel that it's very simple. The way the meat industry is killing animals will result in a huge karmic energy stored in all these animals that you consume. How do they kill all these animals? You look at them, you'll be shocked. And the industry has led to so much problem, not only it's causing a lot of havoc in the medical industry nowadays, where you have a lot of germs that are resistant to antibiotics because of the meat industry, because they feed the animals with so much antibiotics that the germs have become immune to it. So we are seeing a comeback of very old diseases, tuberculosis, because we are losing antibiotics. Antibiotics don't really work anymore. Imagine just the chicken industry. Last time we just raised chicken and produced chicken, but nowadays you are immediately caught in the system of producing chickens. You cannot say that, okay, I produce, 500 chickens. If you want to work for, say, KFC or McDonald's, they say you have to produce that amount of chicken. We come in, we give you the facilities, you run. And then you get tied up with the entire bank loan for setting up the facilities. And you're supposed to do it exactly how we do it. Upgrading machines, more chickens, and pumping in whatever nutrients or medications, medicines into the animal so that you can produce all this. Last time I used to think that chickens need about 70 to 80 days before you can slaughter chicken. These days, they slaughter chicken at 30 days, 40 days. The amount of chemicals that they pump in this chicken to make them grow so fast that the chicken's bone structure cannot support the weight. So the whole entire meat industry is based on a scam. And then the dairy industry, you have, for strong bones, you need to drink milk. Right? We all are led to believe that we all have to drink milk. Brother, you seem to know that is otherwise. Right? Milk is not going to help your bones. the calcium from milk is not the problem, but is the protein in milk. Again, we come back to the animal protein. The protein in milk will give you the problem. It will change the acidity level in your body, and then for your body to neutralize the acidity, you have to draw the calcium from your bones, and then you end up worse than before. So you can't get calcium from vegetables, you can't get protein from vegetables. So why do I believe that we must have meat and we must have milk? Because we've been made fools of. Because the advertising campaign says so. Because the advertising campaign says that, a bar of Cadbury chocolate is so enticing, you must have it. So that's why the whole entire thing, when we look at it, avoiding fools, associating with the wise, on the surface value, we can see that, yes, stay away from bad people. On a more deeper level, we can also look inwards and realize that there is a fool in all of us, and there is also a sage in all of us. And with that, we realize that the Buddha's teaching, in the beginning, when I told you, as Buddhists, you really need to know the reason why to strive on. You almost feel as though it is so pessimistic. And then when you realize that, your entire life is an illusion and you're living, you're being scammed all the time based on your greed, you start to realize that what the Buddha said is universal truth. It's the best advice that you can get. And then you become happy to be a Buddhist. Okay? So with that, I end my talk. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Yep. Conceited. Right. Right. Yes. The only one to be able to do what? To do good. Yep. Yep. Yes. Yes, that's right. In that level, yes, people from other religions are also able to do that. We are also taught not to kill, to do good, But the one thing that sets Buddhism from all the other religions is the concept of non-soul. So when you say conceited, that means it says I, only I. Yeah. Only this Buddhist religion. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yes, like I said, no religion will teach you to do the bad things, you know. So all religions have points of wisdom, but the only thing about Buddhism is the non-soul part. That sets it away, you know. Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
like the late chief always says, there's no religious labels. The good values is in every one of us.
Yeah, but one thing is that sometimes, let me give you an example of the false delusional confidence that you can get if you are presented with something that you hold to be true and eventually realize it is not. You know, the example of a child that was brought back to life, and then because of that, the parent took that as divine favor and raised this child up as if he was a messenger of God. You know, so it's the kind of confidence you get. The child grew up thinking that he is a messenger of God. You know, so with that truth, of course, initially, you know, the family gained a lot of fame. But after that, as the child began to develop and started to realize that, you know, living life, you know, the ills of life come to him. And he began to struggle with it. He began to realize that, you know, why am I different? Why should I be different? He cannot come to terms with it. And he wanted to kill himself, you know, to prove. When his friend has already told him that he is not the messenger of God, you know, the messenger of God can come back to life. If I'm the messenger of God, God will bring me back to life. So that's the kind of, I'm not saying that some religion preach this, but what I'm saying is that if you get the wrong idea of truth, you hold on to it, you get the kind of confidence until it's being tested right to the limit. When the child say that he climbed up the building, he was going to jump down, and said that if I'm the messenger of God, after all, God came back to life. You know, I jump down, I die, and God will save me. You know, bring me back to life again. After all, I did that once. You know, so he's delusional, and then he thinks that that's going to happen, and he's going to kill himself. And then the parents are forced to then tell the child that he is not a son of God. Yes, yes. That's a reality. So we have to deal with that. So that's why I said that Buddhism is very, very difficult religion. You know, when what is asked for is really something against the grain. You know, so I'm just saying that even in Buddhism, people fall into traps. That's why I said that, you know, devotees can easily get confused in this atmosphere. You know, thinking that even a lot of meditators, you know, are attached to certain things. And then they realize that that is the truth. Whereas the Buddha's teaching is always about non-attachment. Non-attaching to anything, even yourself. A good example was the meditation teacher from Sri Lanka, who was here recently. And he related a story about a couple, who a very, very loving couple. And they always do things together. One day, he found out that he realized that, why only one person? Asked, where's your wife? And then he said that, my wife is not well. So he went to visit. And he found out that the wife took up meditation and found that meditation was so peaceful that all she wanted to do was just sit down and do meditation. Last time they were doing everything together. They were so happy together. They went out shopping together. They do everything together. And then now she's just contented just sitting down doing nothing. So that's the thing about Buddhism. It's the only one that tells you, be careful of this attachment. Anything, it could be, you think that you're in your meditation you're achieving some, jhanic stage, and then you get attached to it. And in the end, you are even asked to see that your own soul is not permanent. There's no such thing as a soul. The joke about you can't touch a river twice? So that's sort of like an analogy of life. There's ever constant flux. You can't touch a river twice. But I'm telling you that you can't even touch a river once. Because who is touching the river? In Buddhism, your entire person, your entire consciousness is always changing also, You're never the same person in any instant. So the person who touched the river once is not going to be the same person who touched the river also, So that's the kind of thing that you have to be careful. You can strip off the label Buddhism. It doesn't really matter. But it is the kind of attachment that is dealt with. Any more?
Okay, I think we call it a day. And please put your palms together and say sadhu to brother. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.